Prosecution, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hello, Ash. How did you first come into contact with the defendant?
He called me from an unknown number last year.
What name did he begin using?
Jasper.
How did the defendant primarily contact you?
He called me with unknown numbers on the phone.
In those phone calls, did he ever use any other names?
Not in the unknown phone number calls.
The prosecution would like to bring attention to a few pieces of evidence, Your Honor. There's going to be a couple. It's going to be the people's RSTUNV. They're all going to be pieces of evidence regarding phone calls and text messages.
Okay, those have all already come up, yes?
I believe so, Your Honor. I'm just clarifying.
All right, I already have those open. Proceed.
Okay. Ash, what was said during these conversations?
He told me how he was gonna hurt people. He said he had a list and we were on it. But also he said that he took us off it and well, he said a lot of different things. It was confusing. There was a lot of calls over a long time, and he said he didn't want to hurt me, and that he was worried. But he said he would set Tate free, but he asked if we were friends, and he said he wouldn't lie, and then eventually he said we should play a game, and then eventually we were playing a game of Mousetrap.
Did he ever go into detail about what Mousetrap was?
At one point, he said that we were both trying to catch each other.
Okay. And during these phone calls, could you give a rough estimate as to how long they were?
They went anywhere from a few minutes to much longer, to maybe 40 minutes, an hour at the most, and not longer than that.
Prior to being taken,
Yeah.
what?
He called me from a normal phone number, and he changed his voice. He sounded different, and he said his name was Alfred, and he wanted a job interview, and we agreed to meet at jail so he could have the interview. And I didn't know it was him until after I left, and he called me, and he was taunting. He said that the game of Mousetrap, it wouldn't have been so hard after all, and he told me I should be careful, and hung up the phone.
Did this application seem genuine?
Up until he called, yeah.
How did these interactions make you feel?
I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't realize it was him, and I went into a panic.
And did you fear that your friends and loved ones would possibly come to fruition?
Yeah,
Could you elaborate?
He said in the phone that he was gonna hurt people and he wanted ideas for how to hurt them and he hurt Reggie.
On December 22nd, you reported that Reggie Might had been kidnapped. How did you learn about his kidnapping?
I was at the cafe with Reggie and I went inside and he was outside and then I came back and he wasn't there anymore. And I tried to call him and he didn't answer and I tried the radio and he didn't answer and I looked around and after a while I got a phone call from an unknown number and it was Jasper and he said he caught his prize buck and he said he was gonna cut him, give him back piece by piece. He said he wanted to recreate Reggie's favorite cassette tape that he bearded the construction site.
Your Honor, the prosecution would like to bring attention to the People's F report number 32383.
Go ahead.
How
Yeah,
did
Mash
you
really
learn
putting it
of
out there,
Reggie
dude.
Might being found on December 25th?
I was the one who found him. I got a call from Jasper and he said something about tunnels and an escalator and construction and I went down in the tunnel on the highway and he was down there and he was on the ground.
Was this a long or a short phone call with the defendant?
It was short.
Do you remember? Do you remember how long that phone call was?
Just a few minutes, I think.
You also stated that you feared for your own life. Did this come true as well?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
I got a call from an unknown number and the person had a deep voice and they said that we saw an enemy and we're both on his list. And they had information on where he was and they wanted us to work together to catch him and they asked me to meet at the airport at Grapeseed and when I drove Reggie's motorbike and when I got there then there was a guy already there and he had a big coat and a skeleton mask and I got off the bike and I said hello to him and he took off his mask and he pulled out a knife and he stabbed me in the stomach and I fell and I blacked and had and he carried me out of the hangar across a field. I next so I woke up and tied up in the dark room. He said mousetrap.
The prosecution would like to bring up report the People's M report number 39115. To clarify for the court, you were kidnapped from the Grapeseed airfield.
CG terrorism case got pushed back an hour because this trial was going on too long.
Miss Ketchup.
Sorry, I missed it. If you said a question, I missed it. I'm sorry.
No, you were perfectly fine. If you need a minute, you let me know.
This is why I'm
And-
sorry.
The prosecution was bringing up the People's M report number 39115. And I
Yeah,
had
we
asked,
got that. Just
Okay.
yeah, just repeat the question.
Understood, Your Honor. To clarify for the court today, you were kidnapped from Grapeseed Airport.
Yeah, in the big building.
When you say the big building, are you referring to the hangar?
It, you know,
How would you describe the quality of the living conditions in which you were kept in?
it was dark and it was scary. It was a small dark room and there was no windows and there was bed and a few other bits of furniture and it was dark and scary.
Would you say that you were well taken care of in this place?
No, Bunny was scared too.
Do you remember if he fed you?
No, he said he wanted me to stay weak so I wouldn't fight back. So he wouldn't give me anything. Soft about it.
When he attacked you in the People's M, he likens you to an Abigail. Was this the only time he mentions this woman?
No, he mentioned her a few times. And he said that they used to play games. Him and Abigail. And that's why we started off with hide and seek tag and then mousetrap because those games.
Did the defendant ever state who Abigail was?
Yeah, he said she was sister.
Okay. No more questions, Your Honor.
Cross.
Go ahead, defense.
Hey, Miss Ketchup. Initially, when your testimony started, you mentioned a phone call from, quote, what you alleged to be the defendant, anonymous number. However, it was never asked why you believe this anonymous phone call was the defendant from you. Could you answer that for us?
Objection vague?
Literally, she was talking about she received a phone call. It was an anonymous number and goes on in her testimony to assert that these calls are from the defendant. And I want to know why she believed that.
All right, Mr. Grizz, you do not need to explain that. Just ask your question, and if it's been asked and answered, the prosecution will object. Ask the question.
Why did you believe the anonymous phone call to you was from the defendant that stands before you today?
He introduced himself. I didn't know who he was. He told me.
He introduced himself over the phone, Miss Ketchup?
Yes.
And what did this person introduce themselves as over the phone from the anonymous number?
That's Jasper.
Okay. When you learned about the Reggie kidnapping, as you were saying, you said you knew because you went inside and he wasn't there anymore. Then you received a phone call about a prize buck. Aside from coming out, not seeing Reggie, and receiving the phone call at the prize buck at that time, why did you believe the defendant was involved in that quote-unquote alleged kidnapping? Or, well, rather, why did you believe that the defendant was the reason Reggie was not outside anymore?
Objection confusing or vague? And vague?
rephrase the question, Grizz, but I do need 10 seconds, just 10 seconds to sort something out before you ask. So talk amongst yourselves.
Flop, you're going to ask a question similar to what I asked before about if were there any topics that were carried between the unknown and the known phone calls, and then you need to ask if any of the what he said in person.
Okay, go ahead.
He referenced those unknown phone calls.
In your testimony, you were questioned about a kidnapping of Judge Reggie Might. you mentioned in your testimony the reason you had suspicions was because you went inside and you came back outside and Reggie wasn't there anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah. We were supposed to meet with Jasper later in the day, who Reggie was, and I was gonna watch over him.
And then you mentioned you received another anonymous phone call that mentioned to you that they got their prized buck. Is that correct?
Yes.
At that time, did you have any reason to believe that the defendant was speaking about Reggie or had anything to do with Reggie no longer being outside at that time?
Reggie had told me in the past that he might be taken, and he was worried that he would be. So when he was gone, that's what I jumped to. And then I got the phone call.
Okay, fair enough. You mentioned another phone call mentioning the mousetrap. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is it possible this caller was referring to the board game known as Mousetrap?
That's what I thought at first, too.
Objection? Speculation?
No.
She just answered.
Well, I hadn't finished answering.
All right. The objection is on the floor. No back and forth. The objection is speculation. Rebuttal. Go.
Rebuttal is the phone call as she described it was just mentioned if she wanted to play Mousetrap. It could have been referring to a board game.
Okay. The question was, is it possible if that was the reference?
Rebuttal,
Correct.
Your Honor?
Is it possible?
How is the witness supposed to know the intentions of the caller?
That's a good point.
All right. I'm going to overrule the objection. Is it possible that he was talking about Mousetrap? Now, again, Grizz, are you asking if it's possible now or if she thought it was possible at the time?
If she thought it was possible at the time.
Go ahead and answer.
At the time, I thought it was. But it became more and more apparent that it was more than that. That it wasn't just a board game. He didn't just want to play a game.
All right, Ash. During during this phone call prior to the meeting at Grapeseed, did you have any idea on who you were meeting with?
I didn't know the name. They said something about a hashtag. And I thought maybe it could have been someone in that group. Smiley group.
Did you go alone to that meeting?
Yes.
And were you disguised in any way?
Had a helmet on.
What type of helmet?
It was a motorbike helmet because I rode Reggie's motorbike.
Did that motorbike helmet have like a visor on it?
Objection relevant.
Rebuttal.
Somebody's food got delivered.
I mean, okay, well, I'll get to it, Your Honor. I don't know how to rebuttal that because I was building a foundation.
Under the circumstances, I'm going to allow this question to continue. Miss Ketchup, you may answer the question.
Yes.
And how long between you stated the individual unmasked themselves and then stabbed you? How
Yeah.
long would you say between the unmasking and stabbing?
Only a few seconds. It was very fast.
And in those few seconds, are you 100% able to identify the attacker to a motorcycle helmet visor?
I don't think so. It happened so fast.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Anything on redirect prosecution?
I do.
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
But could you give us 1 moment to confer?
All right. I'm about to play Mousetrap with Grizz in a minute.
Yeah, I don't it's like one thing to be like a defense attorney, it's another thing to be like completely callous and arrogant with someone who's experienced a great deal of trauma for no fucking reason.
Yeah, his questioning under the circumstances, the very visible circumstances, kind
We're
of hit like a
Yeah.
brick
Your Honor,
through a window.
prosecution's ready.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Wanted to make sure you were ready. Ash, were there any topics from the known phone calls or interactions in person with the defendant that lined up with the unknown phone calls?
For Vietnam, thank you for the tier 1. Appreciate you.
I don't understand what you mean. I'm sorry.
Rildo, I think I missed a
I'll try
tier
and
1 sub when
clarify
I
it.
was out getting a drink. Thank you as well.
Were you called from 2 different numbers, an unknown number and the defendant's phone?
Yeah. After I did the interview, he called me more frequently from the regular number rather than an unknown number.
Okay. Between that number and the other one, to clarify the first question, did anything that the defendant brought up in those calls line up with each other?
Hey, Dr.
It
Cudley.
was usually always the same sort of thing that we talked about them wanting to hurt people.
To confirm, what did the defendant say to you when you were taken?
It's a mousetrap.
And did you tell anyone you were going to be at this meeting?
I wasn't expecting to go at first, so I borrowed Reggie's bike to go somewhere else, and then I headed towards Grapeseed after I got the call. And on the way there, my friend saw me driving, and he called me and asked where I was going, and I said I was gonna have a meeting with someone, but I wasn't sure who it was. And I said, if you don't hear from me, please call Reggie.
No more questions.
All right, defense, do you wish to recall this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Ketchup, you may step down for now, but you will be asked to return to the stand to be questioned by the defense. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you.
What is up guys, my name is Charlie and welcome back to my channel. In this video I made a Twitch highlights compilation for you. Hope you enjoy watching, and I'll talk to you later. And that is it, guys, for the video. Like, share, and subscribe if you want more. Thank you.